Alright, so I kind of already went over what I actually picked up with the Switch 2 on launch day between the system itself, a handful of games, and then a few first-party things from Nintendo like the Pro Controller and also the camera. But today's video will be mostly about third-party accessories that I also bought for the Switch 2, or they represent third-party accessories that I've had in my collection for a while and have battle tested over the course of months or years in some cases that are also pretty complimentary for the Switch 2. So without further ado, let's kick this off by talking about a couple of cases that I grabbed for the Switch 2, and then we'll move on to some more fanciful gear that's good for the Switch 2 in terms of performance, comfort, or longevity. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about was this Bocase large carrying case that I bought for the Switch 2, and I think it's the first case that I actually bought in the weeks leading up to the Switch 2's release, and it's just a basic case. It has a pretty simple design, but it also has plenty of space inside to hold not only your Switch 2, but it also has 24 card slots for holding your cartridges, and then also an interior zippered mesh pocket where you can stuff extra cables, Joy-Cons, or whatever. It has smooth pull zippers, and then also a fairly rugged rubberized handle, which I appreciated. And while I wouldn't say that the design's really anything to write home about, it's certainly functional in all of the right ways, and has a few different colors available that you can choose from. I went for the basic white myself because I thought it looked pretty nice. But even though I appreciate the design and that it's certainly capable for short trips out and about to hold your Switch 2 and a few accessories, I wouldn't necessarily pay $29.99 for it, and that's what it's going for right now on Amazon. Because when I ordered this case, it was only $12.99, and if I'm going to spend 30 bucks, I think I could probably find something a little bit more name brand for that kind of dough. Although it does do everything it needs to do and I don't have any real major complaints about it, I'm just saying it's fairly basic for $29.99, and if you are going to go for this case, I would definitely recommend shopping around a little bit on Amazon to see if you can find something comparable at a lower price, or see if this one doesn't go back on sale, because while I would have paid 13 bucks for it, and in fact I did, I don't know that I would pay 30 for it necessarily. But again, if you do find it on sale, it is a perfectly competent case and I've had no issues with it so far. And next up is another case that I actually ordered a little bit in advance of the Switch 2 releasing, and that would be the JSAUX protective clamshell plastic case. And this one comes in at about $25.99, although I think when I got it, it was closer to $19.99, so this might be another situation where you just want to shop around a little bit or see if it does take a dive or if there are any manufacturer coupons or anything like that. But in stark contrast to the bulkier CoBak case, this is a very slim, form-fitting case that actually has a snap enclosure that keeps everything secure, and it perfectly contours to the dimensions of the Switch 2. And aside from the fact that it just feels really secure when it's inside the case, I also like that it does have sort of raised plastic around the analog sticks to make sure nothing can bump up against those, because honestly when it comes to Joy-Cons, I expect drift will manifest with these at some point, so anything that I can do to keep these from getting knocked around too much if I just throw my Switch 2 in a bag or something is definitely welcome. Also, aside from those raised plastic bits for the analog sticks, on the inside there are 5 indented ridges that you can actually put game cards into, either facing in or facing out if you would like, meaning that in addition to the Switch 2, you can also hold 10 different games if you would like. Well, I guess 11 if you keep one in the system, but you know what I mean. Also, I do kind of appreciate the translucent look of this case, because if you do put those game cards in where they're facing outwards towards the lid, then you can kind of see what you brought with you a little bit through the top of the case without having to open it up. And while I would say, again, this is probably best suited to just tossing into a backpack or something like that, where it might be rattling up against other hard plastic objects that might potentially damage your Switch, I also found that it's slim enough that you can throw it into a cargo pocket if you wear cargo shorts or something like that, and at least once or twice I've taken it out this way. And I will say that even though I joked about doing a drop test with my Switch 2, I inadvertently did a drop test for the Switch 2 while it was in this case, and it did survive, and the case did not pop open. So even though I didn't intend to do that test, I'm glad to see that I did actually get some real world experience, where getting out of the car, I probably dropped my Switch 2 about 2.5 feet, I would say, and it slammed into the concrete, but the case didn't really take any major damage, and the Switch 2 did not pop out of it or anything like that, so yeah, that worked out really well. And next up, speaking of game card or game keycard storage, I did actually grab a game card case specifically for holding Switch games. Well, Switch and Switch 2 games, it holds them both, but I bought this from Best Buy when it was on sale for something like $7, and it holds 24 different cards, and in addition to being able to hold 24 Switch or Switch 2 cartridges, it also came with a couple of inserts that snap open, and then you can put microSD cards in there, which I thought was nice. And I also really like the way it's arranged with 4 rows of 6 cards. I kind of used them to kind of arrange my cards in a way where I had like multiplayer games on one row, and then I had Switch 2 specific games on another row, and then games I was actively playing on yet another row, with still plenty of space left over. Now, a lot of the time, realistically speaking, if you are going to throw your Switch 2 into a case anyways, those tend to already have storage for cards, but where I found this to be really helpful is whenever I'm playing portable mode here at home, and I want to make sure I have a range of games at the ready from my physical collection, but without having to carry like tons of cases like upstairs or downstairs. But yeah, if you tend to play your Switch 2 portably a lot and you just want to keep your most commonly accessed games close at hand without carrying a bunch of cases from point A to point B, I think this is pretty great. And this isn't the only one that you can find. I personally went for the Mario design, but they make a ton of these from a ton of different manufacturers, so know, even though I've linked the one that I specifically bought down below, I mean, you could search around on Amazon and find probably just 100 different versions of this, but this one seemed to work really well. The cards feel like they fit pretty securely in the foam, and yeah, just a great all-around product, and not one that'll break the bank either. And speaking of stuff I got on sale, this was actually a total impulse buy. I was actually out at my local Best Buy, and I just realized that I didn't have a dedicated headset for use with the Switch 2, and realized that the Pro Controller was going to have a 3.5mm jack on it, so I decided I would go and grab this PDP Airlite stereo headset. And when I found these at Best Buy, they were actually marked down to something like $12, but even when they're regularly priced, they only come in at about $25. And to be honest with you, the design was definitely a big part of it. I just like that really bold red and blue look, and I knew this was a headset that I wouldn't like lose among a sea of other headsets and electronics because it would stand out in a really bold way. But if you're going to pay $25 for a headset, I don't think you should necessarily expect over-the-top amazing performance or anything. It is just a stereo headset after all. But I have to say, they're certainly competent for what you pay for them, and they did have a couple of nice features. One is that it does have a rubberized volume knob on it, so you can adjust the volume if you need to. It has a cushioned headband with breathable air cups as well. And it also has an adjustable flip-to-mute microphone. It's fairly lightweight, pretty comfortable, not the best sound I've ever heard in a headset, but hey, again, for $25 you kind of get what you pay for. But if you're just looking for something basic to use with your Switch, and now and again when you actually do have to voice chat with friends, and you're not worried about having like, you know, just the most egregious over-the-top headset that you can buy, this is not a bad headset for what you pay for it. The sound's pretty clear, and again, as the name would suggest, it's a fairly lightweight headset. I don't know that it will be the most durable headset long-term, but as it stands, I don't regret the purchase, and just to have a headset that I have ready to go with the Switch 2, I think you could do a lot worse for $25. And speaking of red and blue designs, this next accessory is one that I bought that really came from one of my primary contentions with the Switch 2, and that is, like I mentioned in the review, it's not necessarily as comfortable as something like the Steam Deck. It is a little bit more comfortable in so much that it has a lighter weight, but when it comes to actual hand comfort, that grip just really isn't there, and even though the Joy-Cons are larger than what we had on the predecessor, it's still nowhere near as comfortable as using a dedicated controller, or again, the more rounded contours of something like the Steam Deck. But this accessory definitely makes it more comfortable than it would have been otherwise, and that would be the Savage Raven NeoGrip. And this is a plastic snap-on accessory that actually comes with 3 interchangeable grips that you can pop on if you would like to. The first is a low-profile snap grip for people with smaller hands, then it includes a trigger grip, which I think is probably the best of the 3 with a rounder shape and ridges for your trigger fingers, and then also there's a plus grip, which is fatter and more rounded than the other 2. So there's definitely some flexibility here in terms of finding the shape that's going to work best for your hand size, but if you want you can also mix and match because each one of these easily snaps on and off using a slide rail system on the back of the system. Also, I should point out that the main section of the grip that actually snaps onto the body of the Switch 2 itself does not interfere with docking in any way. The only major mistake that I made when it comes to the Savage Raven NeoGrip is I should have ordered the specific case that they have for it that actually accommodates this grip when you have it hooked up to your Switch 2 and can actually hold it in a case. I did not opt for that initially because I was like, who's going to need that? I've already ordered 2 cases, I'll just take it off when I don't need it. But in retrospect, I do kind of wish that I'd gotten the case that kind of holds the Switch 2 while it has this grip attached to it. But thankfully it's not a huge deal, you can actually buy that case separately. I think it goes for like $20 and I think the grip itself is about $30, or you can buy them both in a bundle for $50, and like everything else on this list, I'll have a link down below. Next up on the storage front, of course I'm going to recommend that you pick up at least one microSD express card for your Switch 2, and that's not just because it's very convenient to have tons of digital games loaded on it, but also kind of a necessity when it comes to the Switch 2 even if you're a physical collector, because a lot of those games are coming out on game keycards, which does require to use more space on the system, whether that's its internal storage or, in this case, an SD card express. And these were a little bit harder to find at launch, but they're starting to get more and more available. Personally, I went for a 256 gig card out of the gate. I just got one of the GameStop branded ones because they had them available, and again, they were kind of hard to find at the time. But now that they're more readily available, I would say the biggest thing to look out for is just how much space you want. If you're the kind of player who doesn't demand having instant access to your entire library at all times, you can probably get away with the 256 gig card. But if you're somebody who wants every game you could possibly have just at the ready at all times, then you might want a 1 terabyte card. But naturally, I would recommend the middle ground between the two and probably just go for a 512 gig. These tend to go for anywhere from $100 to $120 right now, although in some cases you can find the deal where you can get them as cheap as $70, although I would caution if you're shopping for a deal on express cards, which honestly is understandable considering they are pricier than the regular SD cards that you used to have for the Switch or the Steam Deck, then make sure you're buying from a reputable retailer and also that you're getting a reputable brand. Usually brands like Lexar or SanDisk are fine, and I usually go for SanDisk myself, but considering there are kind of scummy people out there who will make counterfeit cards, or they will just put cheap knockoff cards that look like they're branded as SanDisk when they're really not, definitely makes sense to make sure you're buying from a place that you trust. And with that in mind, if you do grab one through the affiliate link that I have in the description below, it does go straight to the SanDisk store on Amazon and not any third-party reseller or anything like that, so should be a perfectly fine place to buy from if you're in the market for more space. But next up, let's talk about longer play sessions when you're in portable mode, and for that, I still recommend what I call Old Faithful at this point, and that would be the Anker 737 power bank, which I've put through its paces for about 2 years straight at this point. In a nutshell, it's a 24,000 milliamp 3-port portable charger with 140 watt power delivery. And beyond just providing plenty of juice for whatever device you have connected to it, whether that's the Switch 2, Steam Deck, laptop, computer, phone, or whatever, it also has a really handsome OLED display on the front, which will give you battery readout statistics so you know exactly how much power is being drawn from it. And again, this has been on my CoBak for about 2 years straight at this point, and I've used it to recharge tons of devices, and I've probably put it through many dozens of charging cycles at this point, and it's still going strong 2 years later. It's a little pricey at about 110 bucks, but honestly the name Anker has become pretty synonymous with quality for me, and that's why this next accessory is also from Anker, and that would be their braided red USB-C charging cables. I've been using these things for years and years at this point. They have never once died on me. They have great strain relief, and that braided design really does make it almost impossible for them to get tangled, and they're actually pretty affordable to boot. You can get a 2-pack of 6-foot cables of these for about $12.99, or if you want to get a 2-pack of 10-foot cables, it's like $18.99. Either option will probably serve you well, but it's probably worth having at least one 10-foot cable around, if for no other reason than to make sure you can plug your Pro Controller back in if you're sitting on your couch and want to keep playing in wired mode or something like that. But whatever length of cable you go for, I am very confident in recommending the Anker brand. I actually went back and looked through my Amazon order history to see the first time that I ordered these, and it looks like 2016 was the oldest time that I bought an Anker cable, and that thing's still knocking around, although it was actually a lightning cable rather than USB-C to USB-C, but yeah, definitely high quality cables. They will serve you for years and years and years, and I highly recommend them. And speaking of docked mode play, this next accessory is the only first-party accessory on this list that I want to recommend, but I did buy an extra one for myself, and it's definitely worth buying if you're going to be docking up your Switch in different places in your house. And of course, I'm talking about the official dock from Nintendo for the Switch 2. It's not an especially flashy accessory to highlight considering everybody gets one with their Switch 2, but it is still a really handy thing to have, and if you're somebody who, again, bounces between 2 different dock locations like your living room and your bedroom, or if you're like a content creator like me who splits their time between playing in your living room and also like docked up at a desk to capture footage of gameplay or something like that, it's pretty much a must-have accessory. And while I don't love that these are 120 bucks when the original Switch's dock I think cost $80, it's still probably the safest and best option out there, and personally I just don't have a ton of experience with a bunch of third-party docks, with the notable exception of the Pro Mobile dock for the VITURE Pro glasses, which naturally is going to round out my accessories list right now. Now, if you're not familiar, I already did reviews on both of these models, the original VITURE Pro glasses and then also the VITURE Luma Pro glasses, which were its successor that came out a couple of weeks ago, and I think those are actually pre-orderable right now if you go ahead and check out the links below. But long story short, these are glasses that basically put a 135-inch or a 152-inch screen right in front of your face, thanks to a couple of really high-quality OLED panels that get positioned in each eye of the glasses. And I'm not going to do a super deep dive on these since I've already made videos about both sets of glasses and the Pro Mobile dock here on the channel, which I'll link somewhere up top if you want to check it out. The only catch with the Switch 2 is, in order to use these glasses with the Switch 2, you do have to have their Pro Mobile dock, which I have tested at this point. It works really, really well. The only thing about this particular accessory is it is pretty pricey. The glasses by themselves can be anywhere from $400 to $500, although they do regularly have bundle deals where you can get the glasses with the Pro Mobile dock and also an 8-bit Do controller that they partnered with for something closer to like $480, which is actually a really good deal. And it seems like VITURE's pretty keen on regularly doing discounts on their accessories, so it's definitely worth checking out their store on Amazon here and there if you're looking for the best deal. But again, given the priciness of an accessory like this may be a very nice to have for you, or if you're somebody who travels constantly and just really wants a unique way to play, or at least a very immersive way to play, where you can kind of like play it on a long flight or something like that, at that point I think it becomes essential territory. So yeah, definitely an extremely unique accessory. It works extremely well, and I've tested 2 different pairs of them at this point, and it seems like they're pretty committed to continually improving these products. So yeah, if you're in the market for an accessory that will give you a very immersive experience, or at least one that's going to make your air travel way more tolerable, definitely look into the VITURE Pro or the VITURE Luma Pro glasses down below. But that's going to be it for this one, and I'm sure on a long enough timeline I'll end up buying even more accessories for the Switch 2 that I'll probably talk about here on the channel, but as it stands, these are the 10 most common ones that I'm using pretty much on a daily basis at this point. But hey, what about you? Are there any unique accessories that you found for the Switch 2 or that are in your regular rotation? Because if so, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Also, like I already mentioned, there are affiliate links down below for all of this stuff. If you want to go ahead and grab it from down there and help support the channel, that would be wonderful, and I would super appreciate it. As for what's coming up on the channel, I'm working on a couple of contrasting videos, one that talks about what I like about the Switch 2 more than the Steam Deck, and one that talks about the ways that the Steam Deck absolutely dunks on the Switch 2, so stay tuned for that. And then also we'll be taking a look at some of the games coming in August. As always, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch videos here. It really means a lot to me. Take care, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.